In today's video, let's talk about how we roughly know how many Steam machines are being sold every week, and it lines up pretty closely with the Steam Deck. After that, let's talk about how Valve just revealed the Rampocalypse is only getting worse. And finally, let's talk about how SteamVR just got a huge upgrade just in time for the Steam Frames launch. I believe it's happening this week, crossing my fingers. It might even happen while I'm recording this video. How's it going? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you had a great weekend playing a ton of video games. I spent my entire weekend building furniture, moving things around. I redesigned the space where I'm going to play the Steam machine because I've wanted to do it since I moved in here, and now I finally had a reason. I went for a halfway split between a video store and a Resident Evil save room, and it's just been awesome playing through AC Black Flag Resync down here. I'm glad I put in that work. I'm really happy with how it came out, so in this week's game testing video, you'll definitely have something nice to look at. Well, nicer than it was before, I would say. Before I jump into it, 85% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so if you're one of those people, help me out by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's talk about sales figures on the Steam machine. These came out over the weekend, and honestly, I've seen the dumbest takes I could possibly see. So the way this was figured out over at Boiling Steam was by using a model that they used on the Steam Deck, which ended up being pretty accurate, and it all relies on the top seller chart on Steam, which, if you didn't know, is based on how much money a game or item makes versus how many copies or units it sells. So that's why the Steam machine is consistently at the top of the list and then starts to fall, because they do the order emails all at the same time. People purchase the Steam machine and then it goes up the list, and then when people stop buying the Steam machine while they wait for their order emails, it falls down the list and it just cycles through that. The same thing's happening with the Steam Deck right now, and it stayed pretty high up on the list because, of course, people are still buying it and the price went up, so it's going to stay up high on the list. It's rough math, so the window of how many are being sold is actually pretty wide. It's somewhere between 12 to 15,000. It would obviously be a lot easier to gauge how many are being sold if we knew how many of each unit they're producing, because as we know, there are 4 different SKUs for the Steam machine. 2 without controller, 2 with controller. They're all varying different prices. So there's a lot of guesswork involved, which is how they came up with a wide window of 12,000 to 15,000 units a week. So if you do the quick math, you times 15,000 by 4 and then times that by 12. In its first year, it'll sell 760,000 units. I've already seen people saying that this is low, comparing it to something like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X or the Switch 2. That shows they're not equipped to talk about this at all, because they see this thing as a competitor to the PS5, Switch 2, and Xbox Series X, which it clearly is not. It starts at a little less than double the price of all these consoles, of course, and also there's a big key component being left out by all the critics, which is they're selling as many as they can make. We know that the biggest thing holding back the Steam machine, except for price, of course, is the fact that they can't actually get the components that they need to make it, because even if they had the money put aside to buy as much RAM as humanly possible, because of the data centers, all these RAM manufacturers and other component manufacturers are giving them first priority on the lines, right? Like if they're going to reserve a machine to make this RAM, they're going to reserve as many as they humanly can to keep up with demand from the AI data centers. So not only is it harder to get the parts that you actually need, if you want to overinvest and buy more than you need, the companies are saying, well, it's still not anywhere close to the amount that these AI data centers are buying from us. So shit out of luck on that one, I guess. And I think it's definitely worth pointing out that Valve has repeatedly said they're very happy with how it's selling, they're happy with the reception, and they're happy to hear fan feedback like with the Steam Deck, so they can directly implement new features that people are actually asking for into SteamOS for the Steam machine, and they're not moving on anytime soon, which means they see this thing as something that has a true future. And that means stuff like price drops in the far off future, hopefully, fingers crossed, and more models, right? Like a Steam Machine Pro or a Steam Machine 2. And as they've also said, that should happen a lot quicker than it is with the Steam Deck, because they don't have to wait for a Goldilocks chip. They can basically wait for off-the-shelf parts that provide a meaningful performance jump when you keep it cool with the massive heatsink that they're putting inside these cubes. It's kind of interesting to think about in my head, because you can kind of go back in time to when the Rampocalypse wasn't happening and see the fork that Valve kind of had in front of them. Down one path is to stay on the path that they did with the Steam Deck, which is make something that they actually want to use, throw it out there into the world, world still keep the key focus of making money on Steam as the pillar of their whole operation, but try to provide something for fans of Steam and people who use Steam every day to help them play and buy more games on Steam. Or they could go down the other path, which is just put their heads down, get serious, get down in the dirt, and produce millions and millions and millions of Steam Decks, really be more aggressive with the price, like get it down to $250 or $300, get the Steam machine down to $450 or $500, and make it something that they truly want to compete with consoles with. And even though, you know, I'd love to see it be bigger than it probably ever will be, because it's nice to have more people to talk about this stuff with, I'm kind of glad they chose the path they did. Even in the face of the Rampocalypse, it is nice to know that they're releasing SteamOS for anyone who has an AMD PC. They're hard at work to make it work with NVIDIA, and they're going to grow the Steam Machine user base. There's just going to be a lot of different hardware configurations as more people start installing SteamOS on their own devices. Like, I see it constantly on Twitter. People love the Terra case, where they can put a 2-fan graphics card in, and from the front, it looks really nice and small, but then you see it from the side. It's like an Ioneo device, right? Like when you look at an Ioneo device from top down, it looks great. It looks magnificent. It looks like the greatest handheld you've ever seen. And then when you look at it from the side, it's like this thick, like a block of cheddar cheese. And you're like, okay, maybe some more work needs to be done on these handheld chips. And maybe Valve isn't lying that it's really hard to find a good chip that performs better than what they've got in a handheld that doesn't get 30 seconds of battery life. But I love that people are doing that. I love that there's so many options depending on what type of PC you want to make. I just heard about this Ugreen adapter from my friend Russ at Retro Game Core, where it's $25 and it's an HDMI pass-through that allegedly adds HDMI CEC. I will point out it has 3 stars on Amazon, which, you know, on Amazon, all these companies buy reviews and try to juice their scores. So considering that happens with everything on Amazon, a score that low, even at 3 stars, is kind of something to be skeptical of. But I ordered 2 of them, one for my PC upstairs and a custom build I'm doing that's like a little bit better than the Steam machine, just to see how well it compares. The key difference between someone like Sony and Microsoft and someone like Valve is that when someone buys a Steam Deck or buys a Steam machine, they actually use it. And the biggest problem that Sony and Microsoft have this generation is engagement. Like Game Pass, PS Plus Extra, even the games that people are buying, when they don't buy Call of Duty or sports games, they end up playing like 10% of a game. Like if you go look at any big AAA single player game, the percentage of trophies that people get past like the first 2 that it automatically gives you for completing the prologue or like the first hour of the game, the fall off is absolutely insane. Like you see it go from 50 or 60% that made it to the first trophy all the way down to like 10 to 15%. And that's because even if people are spending $70 on these games or downloading them for free from Game Pass, it's like once you get them out of the Fortnite territory or the GTA Online territory or the Call of Duty territory, it's like something's broken in their brains and they just can't sit still and enjoy a narrative experience that has well thought out single player progression systems. That's not how it works on Steam. People are playing games from decades ago. People are playing games that came out 2 days ago. There's so many games, and the killer feature of Steam is that your same copy of Left 4 Dead 1 or Black Ops 1 that you bought way back when it came out works today on any PC you build. Whereas if you want to play Infamous, you need a PS3 or you can emulate it on your Steam Deck. But if you want to play it on current PlayStation hardware, good luck. It's never going to happen. Even though it can, obviously, because the Steam machine can run God of War Ascension at 4K 120 FPS locked, which is on par with the PS5, still nowhere to be seen over on Sony's console. They do not give a shit, and that's a killer reason that I love Steam the most. But what doesn't have a great future, unfortunately, is the Rampocalypse, because Valve has been doing a few more interviews. I saw they did one with Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg. I highly recommend checking it out. And of course, Yazan and Pierre had to talk about the Rampocalypse. I'm just going to read you Yazan's quote because it's brutal, but it's kind of funny. He says, honestly, it's still getting worse. Just in case people are not aware, what people are seeing on retail shelves right now from our observations is lagging what we're seeing from a bulk supply by at least 3 to 6 months. And then Pierre followed up by saying they're building everything they can get their hands on and that they're limited by memory capacity for sure. And then Yazan wraps up by saying, we knew there was going to be an issue with sourcing, but the extent was beyond anything we actually expected. So yeah, for all the people who are obsessed with saying Gabe is just trying to fund his yachts, they're not making near enough to buy even one yacht from this hardware. And I just believe that the Rampocalypse is happening. But the whole 6-month lagging behind thing is really interesting to me because it kind of came out of nowhere when they raised the price price of the Steam Deck, because for the few months before that happened, we had seen RAM and SSD prices start to like gradually fall over time, and then they shot back up to higher where they were before that decline started. But that's why it came out of nowhere, right? Because everything's 6 months behind. So during that time, we heard all these hardware manufacturers saying that the Rampocalypse was just starting, it's going to go into 2027, but then you look at retail prices and they're starting to fall, and it's like, who's lying here, right? Because they all obviously have a huge incentive to keep prices higher because they're making a bigger profit. Like, RAM didn't get more expensive to produce, the price just went up due to demand from AI data centers, and now it all kind of makes sense because they could see into the future a little bit from buying RAM in bulk, and they're saying, well, people are seeing prices fall right now, but in just a few short months, those prices are going to shoot to the moon, and they're going to stay there well into 2027 and beyond. The key takeaway here is that no matter where you're trying to play games, if you've got an old last generation console, an old last generation PC that's really starting to fall behind, the best time to buy anything, whether it's a PC, a PS5, a Steam machine, a Steam Deck, an ROG Xbox Ally X, whatever, is right now. It's actually 6 months ago. It's actually yesterday. But right now, when you're watching this video, if you've got the money put aside and you can afford it comfortably, like, don't go into debt, don't Klarna this shit, don't put it on a credit card with super high interest. If you can comfortably afford to buy new hardware now and you feel like you could actively use it and actually need it, now is the best time to buy anything, because I feel like it's just going to get worse over the next 6 months. I've seen people saying that, you know, they expect Valve in 2027 or 2028 to lower the price of the Steam machine. The more realistic sort of scenario here is that everything goes up even more in price to kind of level out with the Steam machine. So the PS5 goes well over $1,000. The PS5 Pro gets to $1,500. The PS6 starts at $1,300 or $1,400. The Asus devices shoot through the roof. The Lenovo devices shoot even higher through the roof. And then the Steam Deck is relatively as low as it can be. And then we'll see the cycle repeat all over again, and the prices will shoot up another tier. And then we'll look back on whatever month it is right now, July 2026, as like rose-colored glasses, the cheapest time to ever buy this hardware, just like we did with the PS5 this gen when it started at $500 and now costs $650. It's just such a huge bummer, man, because my worst case scenario is everything moving to streaming. Like, you know, Peter Moore talks about it all the time, where you'll boot up your TV, you'll connect your controller, and you'll just be presented with every game and see how many people are playing anything at once, and you'll dive right in. I hate that for multiple reasons. First of all, it's multiplayer focused. I like multiplayer games, but I don't want that to be the true focus. Cloud streaming is just a non-starter for me. Remote play is fine. I am working on trying to set that up between the Steam machine and Steam Deck just to see how well it works, but it's not my preferred way to play, and I by no means want it to be the only way to play. I like that it's based on hardware I already own. And C, from a game preservation perspective, it's just terrible, right? Like, we've already seen examples of this, like Ubisoft shutting down The Crew and just delisting it without refunding people. You're basically, whether you buy the game, subscribe to a subscription service, or even rent it for 48 hours, you're renting in any scenario, because if they have the ability for the servers to be turned off or the service to go down or to remove it from your account, you just, like, you're renting it. You never truly own the game. And I know that, like, legally speaking, buying a disc or like having it on Steam, of course, does not mean you own it. But on the disc side, so many games actually ship with the entire game on the disc. So like in a worst case scenario where a game gets delisted and it's single player and offline playable, you can just use that disc. And on Steam side, they've more than proven, in my opinion, that they're a trustworthy company when it comes to all digital. If they were going to pull the rug on us, they've had decades to do it, and they've never really done anything to transgress, at least in my opinion. So sucks to see that the Rampocalypse is getting worse, but I guess I'm not surprised, because I have major PTSD from seeing prices go down and then shoot through the roof with the Steam Deck price increase. And finally, for the third topic in today's video, let's talk about the Steam Frame once again. I'm getting very excited for this thing. It's clear Valve is just buttoning up all the final touches, and they can have as much grace as they want on that, because we've seen how many like small bugs got through with the Steam Deck and Steam Machine, and how prolonged the launch period was where they updated SteamOS to get it up to snuff. I think we're in for a tougher ride with the Steam Frame, because there's a lot more work that goes into it, right? Like Android emulation, Android translation, making games from the Quest platform work on the frame, rebuilding SteamOS to work in a VR headset. There's a lot more bases to cover with the VR headset that's running this software natively, so I'm happy to give them some grace to make sure it's as good as possible before they release it. But it seems like they're getting a lot done behind the scenes because SteamVR got a massive upgrade, and the coolest thing is you don't actually need a Steam frame to take advantage of this. If you can figure out how to install or emulate SteamOS for VR headsets on whatever headset or PC you currently have, you can take advantage of these features. Two big things are the quick access menu has been rebuilt for VR so you can limit frames and keep them locked. And also they've added in gamepad mode, so like instead of using the included controllers with the frame, you can just use your Steam controller, which will obviously come in clutch when you're playing 2D games or flat games, right? Because one big selling point of the Steam frame is that you're able to download your entire Steam library and play your flat games on a big screen in front of you, floating in the world or some cool environment that Valve comes up with. And this is cool because it's the same sort of situation we've got with the Steam machine, where Valve is treating the frame, it seems, as like a reference piece of hardware, but the real goal, of course, is to get SteamOS running on as many headsets as possible. So I hope that includes the Oculus Quest 3, because it'd be nice to try that thing out with SteamOS at the end of the day. And then on handhelds, all this work they're doing to get these Android VR games running on Linux, it just helps the AYN Thor and the AYN Odin, you know, these devices that run Android, because it works vice versa, where they're doing all the work to translate PC games, Windows games over to Android. So seeing this work go into the Steam frame really does just help everyone, no matter where you're playing. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.